Hey guys, Mrs. J coming at you from the garage. It was too dark outside already. The light was bad, so I'm bringing you to my garage instead. Today's t-shirt is, and today's story time is brought to you by the giraffe carrying lots of books. Oh yeah, this is one of my faves. The story today that the giraffe is bringing you is called Humphrey the Lost Whale. Stay tuned after because I have a couple other little surprises at the end. Humphrey the Lost Whale. It's a true story. I love this book. It was my brother Jason and mine, and we actually saw Humphrey. So wait, you'll see. Story by Wendy Tokuda and Richard Hall. Illustrations by Hanako Wakiyama. And you'll see Humphrey is by the Golden Gate Bridge in the San Francisco Bay. Here's the San Francisco Bay, San Mateo Bridge, San Francisco, the Bay Bridge, Oakland, Berkeley, Richmond, Golden Gate Bridge, Sausalito. We're down here. Here's San Jose. We're down this way. Down this way. All right. Humphrey the Lost Whale. Our story begins on a sunny day, far out at sea. A pod of humpback whales was traveling south together. For the winter, they were migrating, right? Humpback whales are magnificent creatures that sing beautiful songs to each other underwater. In the whole world, there are very few of them, so each one is quite special. And they are intelligent. Every winter they travel south, and every summer they head north. And they always know the way. There's a river of whales in migration. But even whales can make mistakes. One whale named Humphrey made a big one. He turned away from his friends and he wandered under the Golden Gate Bridge into the San Francisco Bay. Now the bay, as you remember from the beginning, it's a body of water coming off of the ocean, but it's kind of surrounded by land, but has access to the ocean. So he's coming into the bay from the Pacific Ocean. There's Humphrey. Everyone was surprised to see Humphrey in the bay. People don't get to see humpback whales very often because they usually stay in very deep waters. It was a special treat to see one so close to the city of San Francisco. Humphrey was a spectacular sight, as long as a city bus and as big as 7 elephants put together. He would come up to breathe, appearing as if by magic, and people would stop whatever they were doing to watch him. Now, my dad and my brother are sailors, and we used to go sailing all the time, almost every weekend. And one time when I was young, when Humphrey was in the bay, we spotted him and we called the Coast Guard and reported. Of course, they already knew he was there, but I'll never forget that we were right between. We would always come sail out of Richmond, and we were right between Angel Island here and Sausalito coming through the Raccoon Strait, and we saw Humphrey right there in the Raccoon Strait. Okay. So we were like these people, except for our boat was a lot smaller. Okay. Then Humphrey did something that no whale had ever done. Instead of swimming back out to sea, he went the wrong way, up the Sacramento River. Now that's pretty crazy, because that means that Humphrey, here's his little red dot path, he came around the San Francisco Bay, but then he headed up the river. We did this before in our sailboat many times in the summer, and my brother lives up over here in the Delta, which is where the river meets the bay. It's like all those little pieces of the river splitting up. That's pretty narrow and small to get up there. The big river became smaller and smaller as Humphrey traveled upstream. He was looking for the ocean, but it was clear Humphrey was lost. See, it's a lot of farmland up there. Hundreds of people came to see Humphrey in the river. They would stare out at the water, waiting for him to come up for air. Then with a big whoosh, his giant back would appear, and someone would shout, "There he is!" He was an amazing sight, but something was wrong. Whales are supposed to live in the salt water of the ocean, not in the fresh water of rivers. A whale would die if it stayed in the fresh water too long. Humphrey was in trouble. Now that Sacramento River is freshwater and the San Francisco Bay is saltwater, and in between where you have the delta, it's a lot of brackish water first when he's coming out of the bay. Brackish means it's a little salt and a little fresh, but then once you get up in the delta, it's all fresh water, which is not good for our friend Humphrey. Humphrey the humpback. Everyone knew that Humphrey had to be turned back toward the ocean, but no one knew how to do that. After all, something like this had never happened before. The farther Humphrey went, the more worried everyone became. They wondered whether he was getting anything to eat, whether he was getting sick, or whether he would beach himself in the river. One day, Humphrey squeezed under a tiny bridge. It was so small, no one could understand how he had done it. Now he was really in trouble. He was trapped. There's all kinds of bridges like that in the Delta. He got himself stuck. Poor Humphrey. The river beyond the bridge was very shallow and narrow. It was so small that Humphrey could hardly turn around. And there he was, a whale, stuck in a tiny stream right in the middle of a farm field. It was hard to believe. Something had to be done to get him out of there fast. Humphrey looked sick. The scientists knew he would die if he didn't get back to the ocean. Time was running out. So sad. The people trying to save Humphrey would have to move fast. The scientists, Coast Guard officers, and many others got together to work out a plan to save him. They decided to bang long pipes together underwater and scare him back down the river. At the same time, they would play a recording that would broadcast underwater the sounds of whales eating. Maybe Humphrey would be so hungry and lonely he would swim towards that sound, using the sounds to lure him and push him away. It worked. Humphrey turned around and started swimming back down the river. Everyone was relieved, but the danger wasn't over yet. When Humphrey arrived at the little bridge, he stopped. He was afraid to go under it. He couldn't find a space big enough to go through. People kept banging the pipes, and Humphrey seemed frustrated. What would he do? As the pipes kept clanging, Humphrey became angry. He rolled from side to side and thrashed his great tail. People stopped banging the pipes. He was communicating to them. But Humphrey's friends wouldn't give up. They knew they had to get him past the little bridge. If they didn't, he would die in the river. The people trying to save him decided to make the space under the bridge bigger. They brought in a huge crane and worked through the night to clear away some of the old pilings. The old pilings are like the old pieces of wood underneath that support. But then the old ones, they don't support anymore. You'll see those at the beach. Like in Capitola, you might see the old pilings in the sand. Would Humphrey notice the difference? The next day, the people began banging the pipes together again. Clang, clang. The boats moved closer to Humphrey to urge him on toward the bridge. This was his last chance. Everyone watched him nervously. Humphrey bravely approached the bridge, but as he tried to swim under it, his head became lodged between the pilings. He frantically bobbed his head up and down and thrashed his tail to free himself. It was a terrible moment. The people trying to save Humphrey thought it might be the end. Humphrey was stuck. Suddenly, Humphrey lifted one fin away out of the water, almost touching the bridge. As if he twisted his body, he broke free from the pilings and swam through to the other side. He did it. He got through. There was a shout from the banks of the river, and then another and another, until everyone was cheering. "Hooray for Humphrey!" they shouted. He made it. Humphrey the Lost Whale was finally on his way home. Amazing. A whole flotilla of boats and the clanging of pipes behind him helped Humphrey find his way down the river. Flotilla is like a big group. Finally, Humphrey arrived at San Francisco Bay. Humphrey spent one whole day happily swimming around the bay. He did tricks for the people gathered along the shore to see him one last time. They oohed when he slapped his tail. They awed when he leapt into the air and belly flopped back into the water. Humphrey seemed to be saying goodbye and thank you to all his friends who had helped save his life. He was communicating to them, this time in a happy way. The people who had helped rescue Humphrey also felt grateful. Humphrey had taught them a lot about humpback whales. He had also become a good friend. Many times during his ordeal, Humphrey could have simply flicked his tail and overturned boats, carrying the people who were trying to help him. But he never did. He seemed to understand that they were his friends. Finally, in the late afternoon fog, Humphrey swam under the Golden Gate Bridge and back out to sea. Humphrey the Whale had made it. He was finally home. And this is a little note about Humphrey. Humphrey the Whale entered the San Francisco Bay on the night of October 10th, 1985. For the next 26 days, this 45-foot long, 40-ton giant captured the imagination of people of everywhere as he tried to find his way back to the ocean. He traveled 64 miles up the Sacramento River into the Sacramento Delta, finally ending up in the shallow irrigation streams in the middle of a farm field. More than 500 people and $80,000 were involved in the rescue effort. Humphrey returned to the Pacific Ocean on November 4th, 1985, so almost a month. The next year, in August of 1986, Humphrey surprised and delighted people by making a return visit during his annual migration. This time he was spotted near the Farallon Islands, about 30 miles off the San Francisco coast. Some biologists study humpback whales made the discovery. They took pictures and were able to identify him from the distinctive markings on his tail flukes. He had really distinctive markings on his tail flukes. When he was last seen, Humphrey was swimming along with 5 other humpbacks safely out at sea. And here we go again. It shows the map where he came in, went around, and all the way up past Rio Vista, up into Shag Slough. That is really far. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this book. It was written some time ago, let's see, in 1986, just the year after this happened. And it doesn't tell us anything about the art, but I thought you would enjoy this. This comes from my very personal collection from my childhood days. Now, I did say I had a couple more surprises, so if you want to hang in. We just finished reading Smile by Raina Telgemeier. And then I also read you Margaret and the Moon, and that was illustrated by another one of my favorite graphic novelists, Lucy Measley. Now they're both in this nursery rhyme comic book that I got before all this staying home business started from the public library. So I thought I would share you. They're very short, these 2 little nursery rhyme poems that Lucy Measley and Raina Telgemeier illustrated. So it's a new version of There Was an Old Woman Who Lived in a Shoe and Lucy Measley does the pictures. Okay. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children. See, it's Ruth's Rock and Roll Babysitting. She didn't know what to do. Check it out. She gave them some broth without any bread, because her bread is all moldy, see? And then she whipped them all soundly and put them to bed. See, their band is called the Whips, so they all were whipping. And there they are, Ruth's Rock and Roll Babysitting, and she's finally relaxing as her band of whips is sleeping. I thought that was cute. So that's Lucy Measley, and her illustrations, her and Raina Telgemeier are friends. Their illustrations are kind of a similar type of art, I would say, but different, definitely unique. Georgie Porgy by, well, she didn't write the words, but she did illustrate all the pictures and make it how she wanted it. Georgie Porgy by Raina Telgemeier. Georgie Porgy, pudding and pie, kissed the girls and made them cry. And when the boys came out to play, Georgie Porgy ran away. So that's it for today, everybody. I hope you're enjoying story time. Join me again. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Just enjoy this and have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow with some more Pokemon and some other great stories. And I look forward to reading to you again soon. Bye, friends.